The first phone call sounded polite. My mother's voice carried that careful tone she used when asking for something large, but pretending it was small. "We're planning the engagement party for your brother," she said. "It needs to be appropriate." Appropriate was one of her favorite words. In our family it meant expensive. I leaned back in my chair and waited. There was always a second sentence. "We thought you might help with the costs." I asked how much. She hesitated, then gave a number that made the request less of a favor and more of a transfer of responsibility. It wasn't just catering and decorations. It was the venue, the music, the guest list, the kind of event designed to make two families look prosperous and stable. I already knew why she was asking. My brother Daniel had spent most of the past 3 years presenting himself as a successful entrepreneur. In reality, his business was mostly a collection of loans, delayed payments, and hopeful promises about deals that never closed. Our parents helped him when they could. When they couldn't, they called me. "Think of it as supporting family," my mother added. I didn't answer right away. Because supporting family had quietly turned into protecting Daniel's reputation. And this time the lie was expanding. When I told her I needed to think about it, her voice cooled slightly. "You know, refusing could look strange," she said. The implication hung there. The bride's family was well connected. Business owners, investors, people who cared about reputation. If Daniel's engagement looked underfunded, people would ask questions. Questions my parents didn't want asked. Over the next few days the pressure grew. Calls from my father, messages from my aunt. One cousin even suggested that if I didn't contribute, people might assume I was the problem. It wasn't the money that bothered me. It was the expectation that I would quietly fund an illusion, one that involved another family who had no idea what Daniel's finances actually looked like. So instead of transferring the money, I started collecting information. Loan records, business registrations, outstanding debts attached to Daniel's company. None of it was illegal, just deeply misleading compared to the story he told people. By the time the engagement party arrived, I had everything organized into a single folder. I still decided to attend. The venue was a country estate outside the city. Long tables under white tents, string lights across the lawn. Servers moving through the crowd with trays of drinks. My parents looked relieved when they saw me arrive. They assumed my presence meant agreement. Daniel greeted me with the confidence of someone who believed the evening was going exactly as planned. His fiancée stood beside him smiling nervously, clearly overwhelmed by the size of the event. At some point I noticed her father standing alone near the edge of the garden. He was watching the party the way careful men watch investments. I walked over. We introduced ourselves properly. He spoke warmly about how proud he was of his daughter, about how promising Daniel's business partnership sounded. I listened. Then I placed the folder on the table between us. "I think you should see something," I said. He looked down at the documents. At first his expression stayed polite. Then he turned the page. And the next, loan balances, missed payments, business filings showing Daniel's company had no active revenue. He read slowly. When he finally looked up, there was no anger on his face, just concentration. "Your brother isn't a silent partner?" he asked carefully. I shook my head. "He's unemployed." The words weren't meant to humiliate anyone. Just to correct the story. He closed the folder after a long moment. "Thank you for telling me," he said. Across the lawn, Daniel was laughing with a group of guests, completely unaware of the conversation happening 20 feet away. I left the folder with the father and stepped away from the table. I didn't stay to watch what happened next. Instead, I walked through the garden, past the lights and music, and out toward the quiet driveway. Behind me the party continued for a few minutes longer. Then the music stopped, voices shifted. Not shouting, just the sound of conversations turning serious. I reached the car waiting at the gate and got inside. As we pulled away, I could see the lights of the estate shrinking behind us. For most of my life, protecting Daniel's image had felt like a family obligation. Tonight was the first time I chose something else. Not revenge. Just honesty. And sometimes that changes everything.